All right. I'm obviously not Dwayne, much to everyone's disappointment, most likely. He is not here today. He asked me last week if I could fill in for him doing this class. And of course, I said yes, but I got to tell you, it was a reluctant yes. I mean, to me, Dwayne is, this guy as far as teaching. To me, I respect him so much, and he was, one of the reasons many years ago that I decided to, hey, maybe I could be a teacher in Bible class and do that kind of thing. And so it's hard enough to follow in on Dwayne, but to try to do John and use his stuff to do John and that kind of stuff just seems like a daunting task. But he'll be back next week to correct anything I mess up while we're in here today. But we'll start with the review like he's done in our verse in John chapter 20, 30 and 31. The purpose of John's gospel: Jesus did many other miraculous signs. Jesus did many other miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book, but these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. The last couple of weeks we talked about the Samaritan woman at the well. That was the video that wouldn't play, I believe. Last week we couldn't get the volume. There'll be another video today from that movie, The Gospel of John. Hopefully we've got the volume fixed on that one as we move forward. A little bit about the Samaritans, mentioned in 1 Kings and 2 Kings. The temple built at Mount Gerizim, destroyed by the Hasmonean king. They accepted the Pentateuch, but none of the other Hebrew scriptures, despised by traditional Jews and considered unclean by many. They were important in the history, in Jewish history, having started out basically all together, and then the Samaritans were a sect that had broken off, which, if you study Acts, you get kind of more into that as they try to bring them back. We had the contrast between the story of Nicodemus and the Samaritan woman, and you can see they're basically opposites in every way. One, a very learned man versus an unschooled woman, powerful, no influence, respected, despised, trained, moral outcast, a Jewish male ruler versus a Samaritan woman. But in the end, both needed Jesus. And Jesus was there for both of them in different ways. Got into living waters with, I wish I knew how to do all this stuff on PowerPoint slides like Dwayne does. He always has the best PowerPoint slides. I'm going to have to just steal them at some point. But we had all the verses that mentioned living water down here. John, Psalms, Isaiah, had several. Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Zechariah, and Revelation. And that brings us to today, where we get the healing of the royal official's son. So that's where we'll be in John chapter 4. Again, that 35 recorded miracles, we've talked about 7, which is really 8, that happen in John because, it doesn't fit in to add the catch of the fish into it with everybody's things of 7s that they talk about in John. So we had water to wine at Cana in chapter 2, which will get mentioned again here at the beginning of chapter 4. And then now we get to the second sign, the healing of the royal official's son. And first, we'll hopefully be able to take a look at it here.
After spending 2 days there, Jesus left and went to Galilee, where he himself had said, prophets are not respected in their own country. When he arrived in Galilee, the people there welcomed him, because they had gone to the Passover festival in Jerusalem and had seen everything that he had done during the festival. Then Jesus went back to Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine. A government official was there whose son was sick in Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went to him and asked him to go to Capernaum and heal his son, who was about to die.
None of you will ever believe unless you see miracles and wonders.
Come.
Before my child dies.
Go. Your son will live.
The man believed Jesus' words and went. On his way home, his servants met him with the news.
Your boy is going to live.
He asked them what time it was when his son got better.
1 o'clock yesterday afternoon when we were left him.
Then the father remembered that it was at that very hour when Jesus had told him.
Your son will live.
So he and all his family believed. This was the second miracle that Jesus performed after coming from Judea to Galilee.
Okay. So, little map here, Cana and Capernaum. You know, you see Cana here, Capernaum up here. This was 16 miles, I believe it is, was how far that ride would have been from Capernaum to go down to Cana to try to meet Jesus. So just to sort of give you a picture, the whole area of Galilee being this area, and then you've got Cana, Capernaum, not that far apart. Okay, so we'll get into the text here. John chapter 4, 43 through 54. I don't have that exact version. I don't know what translation he used for that, but I'm going to read from the New American Standard on here. And after the 2 days, he departed from there for Galilee, for Jesus himself testified that a prophet has no honor in his own country. So when he came to Galilee, the Galileans received him only because they had seen all the things that he did in Jerusalem at the feast, for they themselves also went to the feast. Therefore he came again to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water into wine. And there was a royal official whose son was sick at Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come from Judea into Galilee, he went to him and began asking him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Then Jesus said to him, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you simply will not believe." The royal official said to him, "Sir, come down before my child dies." Jesus said to him, "Go, your son is alive." The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and went home. And as he was now going down, his slaves met him, saying that his son was alive. So he inquired of them the hour when he began to get better. Then they said to him, "Yesterday at the 7th hour the fever left him." So the father knew that it was at that hour in which Jesus said to him, "Your son is alive." And he himself believed, and his entire household. This is again a second sign that Jesus performed when he had come from Judea into Galilee. So right off the start there, verse 44, it makes the point and to say that Jesus had told them a prophet has no honor in his own country. But then in verse 45, it says the Galileans welcomed him. Like they were excited to see him. But if a prophet has no honor in his own country, then why are they welcoming him in whenever he comes in? Any thoughts on that? We'll discuss more than we normally do in here, hopefully, or it'll maybe a short class today. So, any thoughts? It says he has no honor in his own country, but when he arrived, they welcomed him. You don't really welcome somebody that has no honor, do you? Yes?
Some had gotten to know him, and a few, had a personal relationship with Jesus, and so they knew, even if the whole community did not.
Right. So, yeah, surely he knows some people there on a little more personal basis than he might somewhere else. So maybe some of them welcomed him in. Okay. Any other thoughts on that, on why they might have been so welcoming to Jesus, Michael?
It's saying in the context, it's after some Passover feast when they'd all gone to Jerusalem, and some of the Galileans had traveled to Jerusalem for Passover, and they had seen him there. So, like, you wonder, like, did they see Jesus maybe, like, causing a fuss or, whatever there in Jerusalem? And so now, even though he was in without honor, like, they're like, oh, no, we actually kind of like him because we saw what he did in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So maybe that's, the climate's kind of changing a little bit. I don't know what you did at that Passover.
No, and it could be, this goes along with the Jesus did many signs and wonders that are not recorded or whatever. We'll get into that too, because how did the man that comes, the royal official, why did he all of a sudden think that this was a good guy, to go see? And even though it says it's the second sign, it's really just the second sign that John records, right? It doesn't mean it was literally the second sign that he had done. There may have been several other things that he had done, and words start to spread. Again, I'm just sort of throwing this out here. I don't know that this is necessarily it, but why were they so welcoming to him? Was it because he was the Messiah? Was it because he was the Christ, the Savior of the world? No, he was the miracle worker. This is the guy that does lots of cool miracles. Have you heard about some of the things that people have said that he's done? And so it's like, the local celebrity comes back to town, right? And everybody gets all excited. And, I'm thinking to Jesus, that's not where he wants his honor to lie, right? Yes, he performed the miracles, but he wants his honor to be about who he is. He's the Christ. He's the Messiah. He's the Savior. And had they been so welcoming to him as that, there would have been honor there. But, and it says, for they had also been there when he had done the signs. And in the version that I read, they received him only because they had seen all the things that he did in Jerusalem at the feast, for they themselves also went to the feast. So again, it's where sort of their focus was as the people welcoming him in, not, and that being the reason that he didn't have honor in his own country. And I don't know, that's just me, looking at it. Anybody else can have, obviously a different opinion on that. But any other thoughts on that? Okay. So again, the second sign as recorded by John, in verse 46, it calls this man a royal official. Don't really know exactly what that means. That could mean lots of different things. It could be, that he was just a very wealthy, influential person. This is a person that could have been, very close to Herod in his, royal cabinet, so to speak, right? There's no exact word. Some say nobleman. Again, nobleman can mean lots of different things. Maybe he owned a lot of land. Maybe he was influential, in the community or whatever it is. But he's most likely an officer in Herod's service of some point. Okay, we again don't know exactly what this is. And then in verse 47, as it says, he traveled. When this man heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. Now, again, this is not, a person that would really be around Jesus all that much, right? This is somebody in Herod's service that's a royal official, that's a nobleman, and then here's this guy from Nazareth that does stuff. I mean, he, probably would not have been respected by this man for sure. Definitely wouldn't, you would think, somebody that he would normally seek out, but he goes to make this journey anyway. And this man had enough faith to travel 16 miles over hilly and rough terrain for the chance that Jesus would or could heal his son, right? Again, there's no guarantee that this could happen. He's not, we don't think anyway, seen him heal anyone else up to this point. But he had enough faith and said, I'm just going to go. I'm going to travel 16 miles. You see, if that's accurate where they were, in the movie, over the type of terrain that it was, again, for the chance that he would heal his son. There was no guarantee. Maybe he shoos him away. Maybe he says, I don't have time for this. I mean, you have to put yourself in the context. If he doesn't know he's the Messiah, right, and he's the Christ and why he's come, and he thinks this is just some miracle worker, I mean, what are the odds that this guy's just going to grant his request and travel all the way back with him, by the way? It's not like he knew he was going to do it by word right there, but he thought, I'm going to go and see if this guy will travel all the way back to my house and possibly heal my son. And, how much faith does that take in something? What would you be willing to do, right, for the chance that you could have something like that happen? And, I think that's one of the reasons why this man's faith was rewarded. Any thoughts on that?
Wouldn't he have put himself in some danger by doing that because he was part of Herod's group?
Possibly.
That was so desperate to save his son.
Yeah, no, that's a good thought. I mean, there hadn't been a lot of conflict at this point between, the Romans and Jesus, right? He's not causing a huge uprising at this point. I think, if this happens, obviously towards, the end of his ministry, when they were seeking to kill him at that point, it probably could have caused a lot more problems. But there's also a thought, too, that this man is not Roman, but a Jew, but is in Herod's service. And that comes from, so in verse 48, when he says, you people, unless you people see miraculous signs, he's grouping this nobleman with the Jews that were also looking for signs and wonders. So you people is a plural there. So it's likely that this man was Jewish, but was working in Herod's service. So anybody ever run across that before? I don't think I'm misspeaking on that, but it seems like when he groups him with the same people we just left, right? The Galileans that welcomed him because they had seen miracles, and then he says, unless you people see signs and wonders. So he's putting them, now it could just be that he's putting him with people that are looking for miracles, but it seems like he's grouping him with the Jews that are looking for signs and miracles there. So maybe it wouldn't have been as bad for him to go and do that. Anything else? So we get to verse 50. You may go, your son will live. He had asked him, sir, come down before my child dies. And he says, you may go, your son will live. Why doesn't Jesus go with him?
I have a sense from the class we've been having on Wednesday night at the lodge and just from my own study that there's, I believe it's quoted in the changing of the water to wine. I believe he says to Mary that something about his time has not come. I feel like there's a timeline in his mind of how these, like his last days are to go. And things have to be in the right place at the right time. And this feels, I get the sense that this is like rushing his timeline, and this can't fit in. And the reason he does it is because it was asked. I don't see him saying no. But at the same time, he's like, I can do this, but I don't have the time to do this because of the way that all the events have to unfold.
Yeah, I think that's a good thought. Any other thoughts on that? Anybody ever thought about it before? Do we see a similar story in a different gospel? Where Jesus is asked to heal someone? In Luke chapter 7, Jesus heals a centurion slave. And there he's asked to just speak the word. The man says, he's ashamed for Jesus to come into his house. He says, no, don't come into my house. Just speak the word and it'll happen. Which is what he did here, but in that one, he goes into the house to do it, right? If we look at, just quickly at Luke chapter 7, when he had completed all his teaching in the hearing of the people, he went to Capernaum. Now a centurion slave who was highly regarded by him was sick and about to die. When he heard about Jesus, he sent some Jewish elders to him, asking him to come and save the life of his slave. When they came to Jesus, they strongly urged him, saying, "He is worthy for you to grant this to him. For he loves our nation, and it was he who built us our synagogue." Now Jesus started on his way with them, but already, when he was not yet far from the house, the centurion sent friends, saying to him, "Lord, do not trouble yourself further, for I am not worthy for you to enter under my roof. For that reason I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you, but just say the word, and my servant shall be healed. For I also am a man placed under authority with soldiers under myself, and I say to this one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my slave, do this, and he does it." Now when Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him, and turned and said to the crowd that was following him, "I say to you, not even in Israel have I found such great faith." And when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the slave in good health. So a similar story, right? It's Jesus being asked to do it. Here he's asked to go, but says, "Your son will live," and doesn't go. In the other one, the man's like, "Just speak the word and it's going to happen," but he continues on to go in. I just think it's interesting why he chose each one, or to think about why I don't know why he chose each one, but to think, why does he totally, do it the opposite the way each one wanted? I think it's possible this man that comes to him here, maybe his faith was weak. I mean, it was strong enough that he went, right? But how much stronger was it in the end when he realizes that Jesus healed his son the very instant he said, "Your son will live," from 16 miles away, right? Like, what would that do to you and your faith if you had that epiphany and that thought of, "Oh my goodness, I asked this man to heal my son, and all he had to do was say it," And notice whenever when his people come to him, when he inquired as to the time when his son got better, they said to him, "The fever left him yesterday at the 7th hour." The fever left him immediately. It's not like it slowly faded, right? Like he had 102, and then an hour later it was down to 100, and then finally it came down a few hours later to 98. This was a finality. He said, "Your son will live," boom, fever gone. He went from totally sick to totally better. That's the power of Jesus. Medicine and science and doctors, you don't immediately get better, right? There's always a process you have to go through. But Jesus said it, and it was so. The very second that he made the declaration, there it happened. What does that do to this nobleman's faith, right? It's got to increase at that point, you would think. And it said, his whole household believed at that point. The other story in Luke, this man had large faith, great faith already, and was so humble that he was like, "Jesus, I can't even have you come in the house. But Jesus goes and shows up possibly to honor that man's great faith and to make a point of his humility as he turns to everyone and says, nowhere in Jerusalem is such great faith, right? That man didn't need the reassurance of faith, but it was a lesson to everybody watching. Look at this man's great faith. I think it's possible here that this was a way that this man's faith increased, and then also, it causes his household to believe. Well, the other household believed already, right? So maybe that's where you could see a difference in how each miracle was performed. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
The way you described it, you just imagine how many more people did this nobleman tell? I mean, there's no way he could have just been.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so excited, I'm sure, and probably told everybody, and
Yeah.
word spreads.
Yeah, similar to the Samaritan woman, right? As she goes throughout Samaria telling everybody what happened, yeah, you would think this man, same thing, right? Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I asked him to heal my son. The very second he said it, the fever totally left him. It was amazing. And yeah, who knows? Maybe that faith allowed faith of another household, word of mouth spreads. There's no way to tell. And it's like to Andrew's lesson this morning, right? Maybe our lives and the way we are living our lives and telling people around us about our faith, who knows if that leads them somewhere. You don't always see the results of that, but it's possible that the same thing happens in our own lives in a very different way. Yeah.
I think a big lesson here too is how much merit that Jesus or the Father or God in general puts on believing without seeing. And he says later on, I guess after he's resurrected, I think, that you believe because you've seen, but blessed are those who believe and have not seen. And it really holds a lot. I think there's a good lesson there for us. Like this guy didn't need to like say. I mean, he very well could have been like, no, you're not just going to say that. You're going to come with me. I'm going to make sure you heal, or I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to imprison you, or whatever else if we get there and he's not better. But he went, believing at least in part, that my son is better.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it goes to the first part of the story with the people that welcomed him just because they saw, but not as the Savior, but as, oh, look, this guy's going to do some cool tricks, let's welcome him in. These people, and not only, he tells him your son will live, and he immediately just leaves. He believes it and obeys, right? Believe and obey. He, like Michael said, he could have said, no, I get it, but I really need you to come. I believe you're going to do it, but I need you to come with me. No, he believed and then obeyed, right? Believe and then obey the command that he was given. So there's a little, I don't know that this necessarily makes a difference in the story, but, some of them, let's see, in his translation, it says the 7th hour. I don't know if you heard in the video, it said 1 p.m. It depends on which time you're using. If he was going on Jewish time, then it would have been 1 p.m., but if he's using Roman time, it most likely would have been 7 p.m., okay? Which might explain, if this gospel is written later, then it's a chance he's writing to an audience that would have been using Roman time. Also, if it was 1 p.m., why was it the next day when he traveled 16 miles? Why would he have waited? It's like, hey, your son will live, go home. And he's like, thanks. Hey, is there anything going on in town today? You guys want to hang out for a while? It wouldn't have been 24 hours later when he went 16 miles away. But if it was 7 p.m., traveling at night, dangerous back then, there's a chance he lodges for the night somewhere, then rides back. And again, I don't know that makes a difference, and there's no way to know exactly, but that's why I like using 7th hour instead of 1 p.m. There's no exact way to tell that was 1 p.m. And honestly, most likely it was probably the Roman time of 7 p.m. So anyway, Any questions over chapter 4, end of chapter 4, or thoughts anybody has before we move on into chapter 5? Okay.
After this, Jesus went to Jerusalem for a religious festival. Near the sheep gate in Jerusalem there is a pool with 5 porches. In Hebrew it is called Bethesda. A large crowd of sick people were lying on the porches. The blind, the lame, and the paralyzed. A man was there who had been sick for 38 years. Jesus saw him lying there, and he knew that the man had been sick for such a long time.
Do you want to get well?
Sir, I don't have anyone here to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up. While I'm trying to get in, somebody else gets there first.
Get up. Pick up your mat and walk.
Immediately, the man got well. He picked up his mat and started walking. The day this happened was a Sabbath, so the Jewish authorities told the man who had been healed,
This is a Sabbath, and it is against our law for you to carry your mat.
The man who made me well told me to take my mat and walk.
Who is the man who told you to do this?
but the man who had been healed did not know who Jesus was, for there was a crowd in that place, and Jesus had slipped away. Afterwards, Jesus found him in the temple.
You're well now. This stops. Something worse may happen to you.
Then the man left and told the Jewish authorities that it was Jesus who had healed him. So they began to persecute Jesus because
All right, you can see a shot there that Dwayne has of what this area may have been. I think there's some interesting things in here. We won't get very deep into chapter 5. It says a feast of the Jews. How many feasts did the Jews celebrate? Because it doesn't say what feast, it just says a feast. Somebody say something?
7 or 8?
It's 7. Yeah, 7 feasts, right? So this just says a feast. It doesn't say which feast. There's differing opinions on, where that might have been, and that might seem, insignificant or trivial, But depending on which feast you think this is, dictates how long Jesus' ministry was. Was it, the common thought being, how long did Jesus preach? And how long was his ministry on earth? Three and a half? Yeah, three and a half years. That's kind of where. Well, this sort of is where you make that declaration. If you say this is Passover, then it's 3.5 years. If you say it's some lesser feast, that changes the timeline and shortens it, or lengthens it one way or another, which I had not ever really realized that before, but in preparing for this, came across that. So also, if you look at Daniel chapter 9, there's a, we don't know which feast this was, for sure, I don't guess. We have our opinions on it, but traditional, Jewish history says that this, his 3.5 years was prophesied in Daniel 9, verse 27. And in that whole passage right there in Daniel. So Daniel chapter 9. And you can start in, I'll just start in 24. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the wrongdoing, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for guilt, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. You can see where this might be a, Jesus prophecy, right? So you are to know and understand that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with street and moat, even in times of distress. Then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the Prince who is to come will destroy the city and sanctuary. And its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war, desolations are determined, and he will confirm a covenant with the many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come the one who makes desolate until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, gushes forth on the one who makes desolate. And there was a thing in there about the middle of 7. It says something about right in the middle of 7 weeks or 7. Well, half of 7 is what? 3.5, right? Plus, there's some sort of math involved with some of these other things. But anyway, that's where they always thought he would have 3.5 years. And if it's Passover, then that fits in line with it being 3.5 years. Again, I don't know that necessarily makes a difference one way or another on anything else other than just, something to think about. Another thing that comes up here that I thought was interesting was, man, we just keep seeing water. I mean, water is all over John, right? Water to wine, we saw that one. He gives water at the well to the Samaritan woman and talks about, you'll never thirst again with my water. Here, the pool of Bethesda, and again in chapter 9, when we get to the healing of the blind man, also water at the pool. Jesus walks on water. He talks about being born of water. He talks about living water, okay? And just we consistently see water showing up throughout the book of John. And we saw all those verses, if the slide that he had with the waterfall coming down and all those living water verses all throughout the Old Testament and in Revelation. And it's just interesting that John seems to focus on water in all these different ways here. And, Jesus' ministry, I guess, water consistently popping up. I think it's interesting in verse 6 when he asks him if he wants to get well. Doesn't that seem like a weird question? To ask somebody that's been crippled and lame for 38 years, hey, do you want to get well? It's like, I could just imagine the man hearing that question thinking, really? Like you asked me if I want to get well? Why do you think I'm sitting by the healing pool, trying to get healed? Of course I want to get well. But much like, we see other people that when you've been in dire circumstances for a very long time, you start to get comfortable in that circumstance. Okay, there's been plenty of instances about people that they've been in prison for 20 or 30 years and they get out, and one of the first things they do is go right back because that's their normal. That's what they depend on. That's where they can get 3 meals. That's where they can go to sleep. That's where they can. Possibly this man that's lame likes people carrying him around, likes people helping him, and it's much easier to let other people help you than it is to help yourself. But he says yes, okay? He had to want to get well for Jesus to heal him. And all these healings, you can take them as metaphors for our spiritual lives, right? So you have to want to get better spiritually to get better spiritually. You have to accept Christ. You have to, take that step forward into baptism. You have to obey His commands. You have to want to, and then it happens, right? This man had to want to get physically well, and then Jesus healed him. And then later on, he talks about stop sinning, or something worse could happen. And we won't get into, sin and whether he was lame because of sin and all that stuff. But what could be worse than being crippled for 38 years? Well, your soul spending eternity in hell, right? It's not that something physically worse might happen, which is where I think a lot of people's minds would go. If he says that to you and says something worse might happen if you don't stop sinning, he's thinking, man, what, am I going to not have to use my arms and my legs? Is something going to, is somebody in my family going to die? He was probably thinking of the physical, right? I don't think Jesus is talking about the physical when he says something worse may happen if you don't stop sinning. I think he was talking about in here and talking about spiritually something worse is going to happen if you don't stop sinning, So anyway, we have to want to get well spiritually before we can take the necessary steps. Dwayne will be back next week and hopefully clean up any mess that I made of anything today and then take us on through the rest of John. Thanks.